In this video, we're going to go ahead and set up our user interface. Now, one of the things with the user interface in virtual reality is the 2D projection normally used for your interface is not going to work. And we'll cover that issue, and we'll cover what we do in order to make it work properly. So let's jump right into that. Because we have two different, let's go ahead and let's create a new folder. Let's go to Blueprints, add new folder. We'll call it UI. Inside of our UI, let's go ahead and create a new user interface widget. And we'll call this one HUD. Now, due to the user interface, if we're using, for example, UMG, and let's say we put text right here on the screen. With VR using two different displays for left and the right and things being offset, at the best you're going to see the user interface in one display. At the worst, it's going to end up being in both of them offset, and it's going to cause serious issues. Using the traditional 2D flat interface is not really going to work. You have a few options though. You can take this interface and translate it into 3D and then put it physically in your world, or you could take and attach something to your interface, kind of like a physical display, and have it follow your head around. For our example, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a physical widget inside of our display to create a little score widget that we can see up on the wall. So let's go ahead and get started in that. Let me find the interface for our widget. There's a few things. You're going to need a blueprint to create the 3D widget, and then we're going to need our interface itself. So let's go ahead and we're going to call the blueprint actor, and we're going to call this the in-game player score. Yeah, in-game player score blueprint. There we go. We'll go with in-game player score blueprint, and then we'll go with user interface widget, and we'll call this one in-game player score widget. That way we know that they're married together. I think that'll make it a little bit easier. That way we don't get confused on what is what. So how do we want to set this up? Well, the first thing we're going to do is let's set up our widget for what we want to see. When you're using a 3D widget, it's going to go from the top left to the bottom right in terms of the size. It's also going to use things such as the panel's orientation, if the panel's set to stretching, and things like that, and where they're physically displayed. And I'll show you these issues now. What we want to do for our widget itself is delete our canvas panel, because I'm going to want this to be kind of centered where we're going to put it. And we're going to go with an overlay panel. The overlay panel is nice because what we're going to do is have an image and a text block to display our score, and the overlay panel allows us to really easily do that. So let's go to image, drop an image on there. We'll call this background image. And let's go ahead and take text and add a text block on the overlay. And we'll go ahead and call this the score text block. Let's make sure these are both set to variables. So go to our background image, is variable. Score text block is variable. And let's go ahead and compile and save. You'll notice they're now both bolded and we have variables. Let's set everything up. Let's go ahead and grab our image and center it. Let's grab our score and center it. Now for our image, what we're going to do is, since everything's done in engine, we're going to go ahead and grab ourselves something from our engine content and slap it in there. Go to our brush, image. Let's show the engine content, and let's look for another grid. I like the grids. They work well. And the grid we want to use is our default white grid. And you're going to find that right there. Let's resize this a little bit. Let's go with 512 by 128. And it's going to give us a nice little size. One issue you're going to find here is it's kind of stretched. Let's tile it on both the vertical and the horizontal, and that'll give us this little tiling background as it basically tiles the image. We can't see our text. Let's fix that. change the color of our text to black. Let's fake what it's going to look like. Player score, something like that, but apparently without the quotation mark. There we go. Let's make it a little bit bigger. I don't know. Let's see. Let's go with 40. There we go. And that's what we're going to use. That is what our player score widget is going to look like when it's in the real world. Let's center this that way. Left or I don't know, center. Why not? Let's go with center. That way it expands out of both sides. Again, this is all personal preference. This is just what we're going to go with. But this should be our widget itself, and that's for the most part the only thing we're going to need to worry about. Let's add this into our game itself. Let's go ahead and go back to our in-game player score blueprint. This is the blueprint that's going to display what we want. Now remember I said I like renaming my root. We'll create a new scene. We'll call it root, and we'll drag it on. And now we have a new root and nothing in. What we're going to do is add a widget. This is an experimental 3D widget that basically takes a 2D widget and slaps it on a flat plane basically and puts it into your scene. So in order to set that up, I need to stop saying so, but I don't think I ever will. We want to change the user interface section over here. If we go to space world, that's what we want because we want it to be part of the world and it can actually be physically there. And change our widget class to the one we just created, which will be our in-game player score widget. And as you can see here, we have our in-game player score widget, which is exactly what we wanted. Let's go ahead and compile and save that. And here's some settings we're going to play with in a second. But let's go ahead and put this in our scene. We'll go to our VR map. Now we know that this is going to be our starting direction. So let's take our score and plop it into here and then put it up there. Now you'll notice you can't see it. That's because it's backwards. So we can either turn this or we can turn it inside of here. Now Z is supposed to be facing forward, not Z, X is facing forward. Let's go ahead and just change it in the map. We'll go and turn it around and there we go. Now there's our player score physically in the scene. We'll move it backwards. Give it a little bit of a presence. Let's see. Where's our center? That's gonna be our which right there, right? Well, where is our center here? Our center is -400, so we'll do this at -400. So it's centered. We'll go ahead and move this up. Let's see what happens if we do that. And we'll hit play, and we'll see what it looks like. There we go. Inside of our 3D world, we now have it showing the player score. We've got it up near the top. What happens if we put it right? You know, aesthetic choice. Let's try right there. Let's see what happens. I'm going to go with that. It looks a little bit better. But that's it. That is our player score in the world. Obviously, it does nothing since we haven't actually hooked it up. But we have a physical display in our world. So let's go ahead and hook up the code. We already have functions set up to update the score, so we're going to piggyback onto that. We just need to somehow tell the widget to update the score. So if we go into our widget itself, which is going to be the score, and boop, right here, and then we go into our code, we need an event that's called on this widget. Now, what do we do? So let's use blueprint interfaces to our advantage. Let's create one for our in-game score widget. And then we'll create another one probably for the blueprint score itself. But maybe, no, actually no, because we have access to the widget. We won't need to do that. We just need access to here. So let's go ahead and go to interfaces. And it may seem like we're doing interfaces for a lot of stuff, but using interfaces allows you to keep things clean and generic and reuse them. Blueprint interface. We'll call this blueprint interface, and we'll call this the in-game score. In-game player score. In-game player score BP. No, I guess we don't really need the BP part, do we? No, just blueprint interface. Well, let's go with BP, because if we did one on the widget, we want to make sure they're separate. Let's go back to our player score blueprint, settings, and implement the interface, blueprint in-game player score. And now we have an interface. Our interface isn't doing anything. We need an actual event in here. So let's go ahead and make a new event. We'll go ahead and call it update displayed score. Now in order to actually update it, we're going to need a new score value, which is an integer. And that should be it. Now, save and compile. Save and compile. Now inside of our blueprint, if we were to do update displayed score, we can now update the displayed score. Now, how do we do this? Well, this is pretty simple. Inside of this blueprint, we have our 3D widget. So if we were to get our 3D widget, we can actually talk to it and do something. Now, this is a widget component reference. We need the actual widget component itself, the widget that's inside of the widget component. And that one is the get widget. And we have the get user widget object. This is going to go into here and ask us for this widget right here, the one that we've actually created. Now that we have it, unfortunately, we are going to have to cast it if we don't use a blueprint interface. Since I'm only really going to use this for one thing, we'll go ahead and cast it. We'll show both different ways. Now there's two options. I can hook this up, or since I know this is going to always be, this is going to couple this. By the way, this is why I mentioned using the blueprint interfaces. Doing this right here is going to couple this widget to this widget. Not widget, this blueprint to this blueprint. They're going to be coupled together now because this blueprint, the in-game player score, is always going to look for this blueprint as part of its code. So let's go ahead and right click and convert to pure cast, and then I'll get rid of the execute wires. Since we're coupling them together, we know this is going to always exist because it's right here and created, so we can go ahead and do a pure cast. Now we need to actually do something inside of our widget to update the score. And that one's actually pretty simple. We'll go ahead and go into our widget itself, into our graph, delete all of our stuff, and we'll just make a new event called update score. And all the update score is going to do is update the physical score. We need a new input, and we need this one to be the new score. We'll call this one integer. And what this is going to do is set the text, which doesn't work because we don't have what we need. So we're going to, well, let's backtrack since I think I'm jumping ahead here. Let's go back to here. And now that we've created an update score event, let's hook it up so we don't forget. So inside of here, we have the update score that we can hook up. We can plug this into here. And we can go ahead and maybe go, yeah, we'll just go with that. That's good enough. That's not really going to call anything wrong. Okay, so whenever we call the update displayed score event, it's going to talk to the widget we've created, which is this one right here. It's going to tell it to update the score with the new value that we're going to pass along. So inside of that widget, we need to actually update the score. We get our score text block and we set the text. This is what I meant earlier by setting the text. And we can then set our text to the new score. We'll go over here and we plug this in here, and then there we go. Now we have our new score. Well, it's gonna look like crap if you want to be honest. Let's do the construct event here. This is for testing purposes. And we'll do an update score. And we'll set it to 0 and watch what happens when we start it. This is what it looks like now. Player score with numbers. When we run it, now it changes to 0. All we're doing is passing along the actual value and then converting it straight to text. And that kind of looks a little bit ugly. We don't want that. What we're going to want to do is use the append node. And every time I type append, I get an append array. We're going to want the string append node. And that is what we're going to plug into our text. Organize this a little bit. And what this will allow us to do is in the A section, we'll type in player score, space. And in the B section, we'll plug in our value like that. Move this over. Wow, it was organized. Let's go with something like that. There we go. That's good enough. What this is going to do is when we call update score, it's going to write the word player score, space, add the score value itself, and then put that out to the text. So now when we run it, now it says player score, 0. We can go ahead and kill our update score. Actually, you know what? That would probably be smart to stick there, wouldn't it? Never mind, I'm going to take that back. We actually don't, because if we don't plug this in, then when we start, it's going to say player score and a bunch of numbers. If we plug this in, now it's going to start off and look cleaner. Okay, so there we go. So we added in the event construct to update our score. And we added our update score here. There we go. And that is what we were aiming for. So now we can start this widget off with a 0 score. And anytime we call the update score event, it's going to be 0. So in theory, let's see what happens if we fire at this thing. Let's turn our controller on again. Let's aim behind us really poorly. And, oh my god, there we go. And if you notice, it destroyed it, but it did not update the score. So let's see if we can figure out why. My guess is I didn't actually hook anything up, but I thought I did. So let's see if we can figure this out. We go back to here. We have the update score event. Oh, actually, I didn't hook anything up. So this is one of those things where when you start going backwards, you actually forget to go all the way back. So the widget can update itself. And then the blueprint that holds the widget can update itself. But my actual player, when it adds the score, it doesn't actually do anything with it. So the nice thing is, since we've set everything up, it's really easy to do. We want to take our score widget and we want to update the displayed score. So you're going to see a small problem here. Here's the update displayed score. And it's going to be our new score for the value. Let's go ahead and do this like this. We'll hook this up, but we're going to have an issue. We don't have a target. We need an actual target to update. We need an access to our in-game player score blueprint. You might be asking yourself, well, okay, how do we do that? We're going to take advantage of interfaces yet again. Let's go ahead and create a begin play event. And what we're going to do on our begin play event is find our widget that holds the player score and store it for later use. So if we get all actors with interface and we look for our in-game player score blueprint, we get the first value, which is index of 0. We only have one, and we know we only have one, so we don't have to worry about that. And then we promote it to a variable. And we'll call this the score blueprint, score blueprint. Yeah, it's called score blueprint because that would be more appropriate. It wouldn't be the score widget technically. We save that as a score blueprint. We come back over here, plug that in, save it, and compile. And these two things right here are finished and done for what we want. Let's move this right here as we can. Now we can look at both of them. So what we added on is basically we're getting any actor that has the interface that we want, which is our score blueprint interface, getting the first value. We know there's only one, so that's good. And then setting it as score blueprint. And then when we add to our score value locally, we're then also going to call the update displayed score with that new value on the score blueprint. Now get all actors with interface and get all actors of class is a heavier function to run, but is perfectly fine when you're setting everything up. We're only running this once. We're only setting up our player once. So doing this the first time is not going to cause an issue. Let's run this again. try my excellent backward shooting. And there we go. We shot. It was destroyed. And it says player score 1 at the top. So now if we were to actually take our little target, hold down Alt, and duplicate it a few times like that. Let's do this one, move it up. We now have 4 targets, of which I can't see one. Let's move it over. I don't have the headset on. So here we go. We have 4 targets. Now if we shoot our targets horribly, horribly backwards, we have 1 point, 2 points. Oh, that one's going to be sucky. Oh, how am I going to get that one? Nope, there we go. 3 points. Oh, am I even going near that one? There we go. 4 points. We had 4 targets. We got 4 points. We didn't have to do anything special other than simply add in more targets for us to hit. So despite the fact that it seems like we're doing abstraction and all this extra stuff, we've set it up where our spawners now spawn targets that can be shot, and as many spawners as we have is as many targets as we have, and is also as many points as we have available. So looking over our list, it looks like we've gone ahead and done everything we wanted for our user interface. Now we don't have some things in there that we're going to want to set up in a little bit, such as starting and ending the game, which we'll cover in the starting and ending videos, but we have the basics covered. Now that we have the basics, one of the issues you noticed there was we're still using our line traces. So in our next video, we're going to shut off our line traces, and we're going to add in a simple particle so we know where you're actually shooting and make it a little more of a challenge.